Welcome back. Today we'll be filling the weighted hook eye and the bill slot. I use a normal carpenter's wood filler. This one happens to be made by Elmer's. It was on sale at Home Depot. You're just going to work your way around where the gaps are. You don't really have to worry about being too smooth at this moment in time since you will be sanding it again. I tend to like to make it a little bit more smooth just because it is a little difficult to get the sandpaper that I use in between here. You just use your finger and you don't really have to worry about being too careful at this moment in time. So you're going to go back and re-smooth everything. And you get it so that way it's nice and built up. I don't know if the camera will zoom in on that or not. Work your way around the bill. Build it up a little bit higher so that way you have something to sand off, so that way you don't really have to worry about having a dent or anything like that. And because I have the mistake back here, just fill that in. Carefully check the bait over. Make sure you got all the blemishes in the wood if you have any. Like right here, my cat had attacked it earlier. And as you go over it, just, like I said, make sure everything's all nice and filled in, nice and smooth, so that way sanding's easy. I cut this slot a little big, so I gotta fill in the front. Just take this, wipe all this away. Bury the hook eye in it. So I'll just pull that away. And there you go. It's all filled in. You just put it off to the side and you let it dry. After you get your crankbait sanded, it's nice and smooth, we can then move on to sealing the crankbait. I use a two-part epoxy called Envirotex Light. There's a resin and then there's a hardener. If you notice on the resin, I have a line of blue tape. It's so that way I don't ever mix up the syringes that I use to measure it out. If I stick this in the hardener, it'll obviously harden on this and it'll make my syringes useless. It's a 1-to-1 mixed ratio, so if you don't get it right, it won't ever harden and you ruin the crankbait. I'll be doing 9 crankbaits, so I'll mix 1 milliliter of each into a small mixing cup that I got from a Five Guys restaurant. You can, McDonald's has little cups for ketchup and stuff like that. They work as well. So I'll go ahead and do that now. I usually pour the resin in first. I overfill, and then I squeeze out until I get to where I need. Like I said, I'll be using 1 milliliter of each product, so a total of 2 milliliters. You squeeze it into the little cup. Make sure you put the syringes back in the same spot, and I'm using a little plain old storage tray. If you mix them up again, it could harden and technically stick to your tray, and then you won't be able to use the syringe. Now it's time to add the hardener. Squeeze the hardener in. Put that back in the exact same spot. Need a brush. These brushes are available at Walmart. They're like $1.50 for the whole pack. It's worth having. Make sure the bristles are going to come out. You got to make sure it's mixed even. Like I said, if you have a spot where it's not mixed even, it won't dry right. Stuff is kind of difficult to work with. After a while, you will get the hang of it. The worst that happens is, you ruin the bait, and you can always just take the bill back off if you pull hard enough. So you're really not out all that much, except for all the time. After it's nice and well mixed, we can then start applying it to the baits. You don't have to worry too much about even coating right now. I like to put it on a little bit thicker, just so that way I know I have enough on. Use a nice light. I have a nice shop light hanging over my work desk, so that way I can make sure I cover everything on this bait. Because if you don't, you will have a weak spot in the wood, and when you go to paint, the grain will rise. Don't worry about air bubbles at this moment in time, as we will be getting them out later. So you just continue to go over the whole bait until it's nice and covered. The good thing is, with working with the wood, it actually makes it look wet compared to this side, and shiny, and that way you can actually see it. As to where, when you're going over some of the paint, you might not always be able to see it, and you kind of got to rock it back and forth in the light. And I know this is really boring to watch. Don't worry, I won't make you watch all 9. Just the first one. Now this is where you need a spinner. This stuff takes 24 hours to dry. Missed a spot right there. And if it doesn't spin, it will all build up on one side of the bait, or if you hang them like this, it'll all build up on the tip here. Hang them like this, it'll build up back here. Obviously it goes to where gravity is. So you will need a spinner at this point in time. You don't have to worry about, if you're doing a bunch, you don't have to worry about spinning them right away. Like I said, this stuff takes 24 hours to harden. If you do manage to find the DevCon 2-ton epoxy, that stuff does become hard a lot quicker than this. It's a lot less runny than this, and it's a lot thicker. That stuff, that was how I started. So this process is relatively new to me. I did like it better, but I can do more at a time with one batch of E-Tex than I can with the DevCon. And cost is a lot cheaper with the Envirotex. The only other downfall with Envirotex is that if there's any kind of like oils from your fingers that may get on the bait, sometimes the Envirotex, the epoxy, just won't adhere to it and it'll pull back. And then you might have to do it again. My baits are so heavy that I don't really see too much harm in adding another coat of E-Tex if it needs it, because it doesn't add too much weight to my baits. But if you're doing a lightweight like balsa, it could throw everything off. It would make it quite difficult to use. Now, when you do get bubbles in your clear coat, well, in this case sealer, you can pop them with a hair dryer. Just put it on low while they're on the spinner. Just hit all the baits. It'll get rid of the air bubbles.